So in terms of my own work in theology, I think the Christian tradition has all sorts of rich and wonderful and unusual ways of thinking about human embodiment and human suffering and sometimes ageing as well. So two figures who I find interesting for all sorts of reasons are Martin Luther and some of his work on the theology of the cross, so how the cross becomes a point of seeing God's presence in suffering and perhaps even seeing God's presence in our own suffering, albeit without sort of romanticising suffering and ageing and saying that those are per se something good or something that we should endorse. And the other figure who I've been reading lately and finding useful in all sorts of ways is Julian of Norwich, where there's a language of embracing Christ's suffering and embracing our own suffering, in the midst of a context where, life was difficult in all sorts of ways. So, regardless of what we make of it, it just shows a very different attitude to what suffering is, and one that, may allow us to reflect on our own situations in some slightly different ways. The fact that she's willing to talk about revelation in terms of bodily suffering and see bodily suffering as a way in which Christ encounters us and claims us, and even while sort of holding alongside that a sense of God's providence and control. So the way in which she is just sort of holding those themes together and playing with those ideas, often with very unusual language and in ways that seem very strange to us.